Beloved, chosen one. Listen carefully. Heaven is leaning in right now, and time itself has paused to make room for this message. You have felt it, an invisible stillness that pulls you out of distraction. That is not coincidence, that is divine intervention. The voice that speaks to you now is the same voice that spoke light into existence, the same voice that called prophets out of caves, kings out of shepherd fields, and you out of your confusion. You are not like the rest, and you can feel it deep inside your spirit. There are moments when your heart races for no reason, when you suddenly feel an unseen presence that quiets every other sound. That is the whisper that stops time. God is not shouting at you, He is training you to recognize His tone in the stillness. While the world screams, the Spirit speaks softly. You have been tuned for this frequency since before you were born. Every tear, every heartbreak, every rejection, it all served to silence the noise of the world, so that when God finally spoke, your soul would know, this is Him. Heaven has watched you wander through noise and confusion, yet never gave up on you. There were moments you almost surrendered to despair, but the whisper always returned, gentle but undeniable. It is the whisper that pulls you out of the crowd, reminding you, you are mine. You are chosen. The voice of God does not sound like the world's approval. It sounds like peace in the middle of storms. It sounds like conviction that burns, but also comforts. It does not flatter, it transforms. The reason you cannot find peace in temporary things is because your spirit is waiting for eternal sound. The Word of God declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 21, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, this is the way, walk in it. Two-sectored, this is what has been happening. Chosen one, that unexplainable inner knowing that guided you away from danger, that pushed you to forgive, that told you to wait when everyone said go, it was His voice. And though others may not understand, your spirit recognizes its source. The Creator's tone carries authority, but it also carries love. When He speaks, you don't just hear Him, you feel alignment in your bones. This voice is awakening again right now, stirring your remembrance. You have been marked by heaven's instruction. Every time you tried to silence it, your peace disappeared. Every time you obeyed, doors opened. That is how you know it is Him. Heaven never wastes breath. You are being called higher. There is no mistake that this message found you in this exact moment. The Spirit of God has pressed pause on everything else just to remind you He still speaks, and you still recognize Him. The question is not whether God speaks, the question is, will you follow? When the voice speaks again, do not hesitate. Do not question if you are worthy. You are not chosen because you were perfect. You are chosen because you were willing. The heavens are waiting for your yes. So as you read this, lift your eyes. Let the noise fall away. Breathe in that stillness that surrounds you now. It is holy. The same voice that called Moses from the burning bush is calling you out of your old life. The same whisper that guided Joseph through betrayal, that comforted David in his cave, that strengthened Esther in her silence, is the same whisper that speaks your name right now. Listen carefully. This is not just inspiration, this is activation. You are being reconnected to your original assignment. Heaven is realigning your path, redirecting your steps, and restoring your sensitivity to divine sound. You are standing in the space between the known and the promised. And your next step depends on one thing: obedience to the voice. When you follow it, you will not walk in darkness. You will not lose your way. Because when you recognize his tone, no deception can hold you. You will begin to see, to feel, to know with unshakable clarity. And when others question your faith, when they mock your discernment, let them. You were never built to be understood. You were built to be led. The world follows signs. You follow sound. That is what sets you apart. Chosen one. This is your moment. The whisper that stops time has found you again. It is not too late to follow. Respond not with hesitation, but with worship. Lift your head and declare, I will follow the voice. Now, if this word spoke to your spirit, pause and honor what heaven is doing. Like this message. Share it so another soul can awaken. And subscribe to stay connected to this divine flow. But most importantly, declare your obedience publicly right now. Comment below 777, my spirit recognizes his voice. You were born with spiritual ears. Chosen one. Even before you could form words, your spirit was already listening. Heaven wrote its frequency into your being. That is why the world's noise never truly satisfied you, because you were designed for another wavelength. You are not deaf. You have simply been surrounded by static. But in the stillness, you remember. There is a reason you feel things others ignore. You sense shifts before they happen. You discern intentions without explanation. That sensitivity is not weakness, it is your divine wiring. You have ears tuned to eternity. When others say, it's just a feeling, you know better. It's not emotion, it's revelation. Your journey has not been about learning to hear God. It has been about unlearning the voices that tried to replace him. From the beginning, the enemy tried to dull your hearing. Pain, disappointment, and busyness are his favorite tools. They drown out the gentle whisper of truth. Yet every time you chose silence over noise, prayer over panic, faith over logic, you sharpened your spiritual hearing. The Spirit has been training you in subtle ways. Every delay, every unanswered question, every night you cried out for clarity, he was not ignoring you. He was fine-tuning you. You see, God speaks in many forms through Scripture, through inner conviction, through dreams, through peace that interrupts chaos. You've experienced all of these, though you may not have realized it. Sometimes his words come as sudden courage, the unexplainable calm that floods you when fear should have won. Sometimes it's a quiet thought that lingers and won't leave, a soft command that feels too simple to be divine, yet carries weight in your soul. That is his language. You recognize it, not by volume, but by resonance. We find in the book of John, chapter 10, verse 27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. You have always been one of his sheep. The world taught you to distrust your instincts, but heaven calls it discernment. You've spent years trying to blend in, trying to silence what others called too deep, too sensitive, too spiritual. But the truth is, those ears of yours are holy instruments. When the Spirit speaks, you vibrate with awareness. That's why compromise feels painful. You are wired for obedience, not mediocrity. The same Spirit that hovered over the waters in Genesis hovers over you now, whispering fresh instructions, subtle nudges, divine downloads. You are not guessing, you are guided. When you walk into a place and instantly feel heaviness, that's your spiritual hearing, catching frequencies unseen. When peace suddenly fills you in the middle of uncertainty, that's heaven's voice confirming, this is safe. Stay here. The world calls it intuition. Heaven calls it recognition. Your spirit recognizes its origin, the voice of the one who formed it. You've spent too long doubting that sacred connection, but it's time to reclaim your confidence in it. You don't need another sign, you just need to trust what your spirit already knows. Every chosen one must go through a season of confusion before confidence, of silence before sound. The silence was never punishment, it was preparation. Like a musician who learns to hear every note in a symphony. You've been trained to detect the slightest whisper of God's will. You're not crazy. You're called. This hearing isn't for pride, it's for purpose. The reason heaven made you this sensitive is because you're meant to be a conduit for others who can't yet discern. You will hear directions before they do. You will sense danger before it manifests. You will speak life where silence has reigned. Don't fear this gift. Don't hide from it. Lean into it. Because when you start following what you hear in your spirit, miracles begin to follow you. The whisper of God is your compass, your weapon, your anchor. You were born with it. And now heaven is reminding you how to use it. The world will try to convince you that hearing is rare, but for the chosen, it is normal. This is your natural state, tuned to heaven, deaf to deception. So listen again, chosen one. The voice that called galaxies into order is calling you to rise. You are not ordinary, you are attuned. When the world grows louder, you will remember this truth. The shepherd's voice never fades. It cuts through confusion with peace. Wherever he leads, trust that path. You are being retuned to heaven's melody, each act of faith another note in the song of obedience. Your hearing is holy, and heaven delights in your response. Every moment you choose stillness over noise. You honor the one who created you to recognize his tone. The Spirit whispers not to overwhelm you, but to remind you you are never walking alone. Keep listening. Beloved, the next instruction may come quietly, but its impact will echo through generations. Your obedience today becomes the sound of freedom tomorrow. Tune your soul once more, and let the voice lead you forward in light. Chosen one, there is a reason your heart wrestles between voices. Heaven speaks with clarity, but the enemy echoes with distortion. The darkness cannot create, so it counterfeits. Every lie you've ever believed was simply truth twisted out of rhythm. That is why discernment is your shield. You are being trained to distinguish the whisper of peace from the hiss of deception. The enemy knows that if he cannot silence you, he will surround you with noise. He copies divine language promising light while leading into shadow. These voices tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to obey. They flatter your wounds, not heal them. You've heard them, you're not ready. You've missed it. You've failed too much. Yet deep inside, another sound breaks through, steady and sure, saying, I'm not done with you. That second voice, that's him. You've walked through moments when confusion became so thick you almost stopped praying. You wondered if you were losing your connection. But even in those times, your spirit still twitched with awareness. You didn't realize it then, but God was letting you feel the difference between imitation and authenticity. Only those who have been deceived can truly discern truth. And you, beloved, have graduated from spiritual infancy. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 12, there is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. That verse is more than warning, it's a revelation of how darkness disguises itself. False voices appear comforting, logical, even loving. They appeal to your logic, but not your spirit. Yet when God speaks, even if his command is hard, it births peace. The counterfeit promises comfort first and chaos later. The authentic voice often brings discomfort first, but leads to divine alignment. You have felt both, haven't you? The momentary thrill of a decision made in haste, followed by the quiet ache that something feels off. That's your spirit signaling the counterfeit. The Holy Spirit is the guardian of your inner frequency. He won't let deception sit comfortably inside you. That unrest is mercy. It is the alarm of heaven saying, "Come back to me." When God's voice speaks, it doesn't just sound right, it feels eternal. It carries the weight of destiny. The ring of authority. It does not flatter, it transforms. It does not push you into panic, it anchors you in peace. If you've ever wondered, is this me? Or is this God? Look for the fruit. Confusion never comes from him. Fear never bears his mark. Remember this: deception always imitates urgency. But revelation invites stillness. Darkness demands reaction. Light invites reflection. You've been given spiritual ears not just to hear, but to test. Test the voice by its peace. If it draws you closer to humility, forgiveness, holiness, it's him. If it feeds pride, rushes decisions, or multiplies fear, it's not. This is your awakening moment. The season of confusion is ending. The Spirit of truth is restoring clarity to your hearing. Every false whisper that once clouded your mind is being silenced by divine authority right now. Heaven is reclaiming your inner soundscape. Chosen one, it's time to guard your gates. Be selective about what you allow in music, words, conversations, thoughts. Everything carries a frequency. You cannot feed on chaos and expect to discern calm. The Holy Spirit is recalibrating your hearing so that deception no longer finds access. You are stepping into the era of sharp discernment. You will recognize counterfeits before they speak. You will sense danger before it moves. The enemy's tricks will no longer surprise you. The same voice that warned Joseph in dreams now warns you through inner conviction. The same spirit that exposed lies in the wilderness now dwells in you. From this point on, every lie that once bound you will lose its power. You will not mistake counterfeit light for holy fire again. You will walk with clarity, speak with conviction, and move with precision. For the voice of truth lives in you, and where truth dwells, deception dies. Now pause, feel that silence after the storm. That is discernment returning. That is your proof that heaven is near. Comment, "I hear truth." Let this be your declaration, your prophetic stand. When you type it, you're not just agreeing, you're activating. You're telling heaven, "My ears belong to you alone." And every counterfeit voice will know its time is over. When you write, "I hear truth," you are not just typing words, you are aligning your spirit with heaven's frequency. It is a spiritual declaration that your inner ear belongs to God alone, not confusion. Each letter carries obedience. I hear truth means you refuse deception, that your discernment is alive and active. Heaven records this statement as covenant, your public agreement that divine truth now governs your hearing and your choices. So speak it boldly, I hear truth. Let it echo through your atmosphere. This is not repetition, it's activation. Every time you declare it, the false voices grow silent, and the true voice grows clearer within you. There was a moment, chosen one, when heaven interrupted you. You may not have recognized it at the time, but it changed everything. It didn't come with thunder or bright lights. It came quietly, through a sudden awareness that your life could no longer continue in the same direction. That interruption was not coincidence. It was God marking your timeline, inserting himself into your ordinary day to redirect your destiny. You might remember where you were, perhaps scrolling, driving, crying, or standing still when something unseen whispered, "Enough." That was not emotion. That was the Spirit reclaiming his child. Heaven knows exactly when to intervene. And for you, that moment has already happened. You didn't stumble into awakening, you were summoned into it. From that point on, your life began to shift. Certain people drifted away. Certain desires lost their pull. You found yourself drawn to quiet, to reflection, to prayer. Things that once thrilled you began to feel empty. That discomfort was divine surgery. God was cutting away attachments that muffled his voice. The interruption was an invitation to hear him more clearly. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 12, "And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper." That gentle whisper is the signature of divine interruption. It doesn't scream, it stills. It arrives not to frighten you, but to realign you. Heaven doesn't need volume to command attention, it uses presence. The same whisper that called Elijah out of his cave called you out of your old life. It's not that you found God, it's that God interrupted your wandering with mercy. When heaven interrupts, everything pauses, dreams, plans, and even logic. God's timing rarely fits human calendars. You might have thought you were delayed, but in truth, you were being positioned. Every detour was an altar. Every disappointment was preparation. That divine interruption forced you to look up, to question, to listen again. It reminded you that your story has always been under divine authorship. There's a sacred pattern to divine interruption. It breaks before it builds. Abraham was interrupted mid-sacrifice. Moses was interrupted mid-routine. Saul was interrupted mid-pursuit. Each interruption was violent in its mercy. It shattered comfort to release calling. The same pattern now unfolds in you. You weren't being punished, you were being redirected toward purpose. Sometimes, God interrupts your comfort to preserve your destiny. That relationship that ended unexpectedly, that job that fell apart, that opportunity that dissolved it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. You prayed for clarity, but heaven answered with a pause. Because if he hadn't stopped you then, you might have missed the greater call waiting ahead. You see, the interruption is not the end, it's the turning point. It's heaven saying, "You've gone as far as you can on this level. Now follow me higher." Every chosen one has a defining moment when God stops the ordinary to release the extraordinary. And that moment always begins with a whisper. Do you remember how your spirit responded? Something inside you knew this was not just another day. The air felt different. Time seemed slower, and peace deep. Holy peace fell over you. That is how divine encounters announce themselves. They don't demand attention, they command stillness. You didn't imagine that shift. You felt eternity brush against your timeline. You were never the same again. Even when you tried to return to your old ways, something invisible restrained you. You couldn't sin comfortably anymore. Couldn't pretend ignorance. Couldn't silence conviction. That is proof you've been touched by the voice. Heaven never interrupts without intention. And now, every time you sense that stillness again, you know something holy is happening. It might come during prayer, in a dream, or in the middle of an ordinary moment, but it carries that same familiar peace. It's His way of saying, I'm here. Listen. Chosen one. Don't resent the interruptions. They are heaven's interventions. Every pause, every detour, every closed door carries divine fingerprints. When God interrupts, it's because He sees danger ahead or promise about to bloom. Either way, His goal is protection and purpose. So, instead of asking, why did this stop? Ask, what are you speaking through this? Because interruption is communication. God often speaks through endings to birth beginnings. You are not behind schedule, you are right on time. The interruption was your alignment. It marked the moment heaven whispered, follow me now. That whisper continues even now, urging you not to fear the pause, but to trust the hand that halted your path. That single interruption set everything in motion. You didn't lose your way, you found His. Every interruption from heaven carries hidden mercy. What felt like delay was actually protection, God removing what could not follow you into destiny. His pause was proof of His presence, not His absence. So when silence comes again, don't panic. Listen. The same voice that stopped you once will guide you forward. Every divine interruption is simply heaven whispering, now, walk with me. Chosen one. When the world around you turns into a storm of noise and chaos, you can still hear the calm within it. It's faint but steady, like a lighthouse hum that refuses to be drowned by waves. That sound, that peace that feels foreign to fear, is His voice. In the middle of confusion, your spirit always finds its way home through that whisper. You've noticed how the world demands reactions. Scroll faster, talk louder, decide quickly, but heaven invites stillness. God never rushes His children, He leads them with rhythm. That's why His instructions come like heartbeat pulses, measured, certain, impossible to ignore once you've learned their cadence. Many times you've asked, Lord, is that you or my own thought? But look closer. You can tell. His voice doesn't argue, it settles. It doesn't flatter, it affirms. It doesn't provoke anxiety, it births a quiet strength. When you listen long enough, your spirit begins to tell the difference by instinct. The way a child recognizes a parent's voice in a crowd. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That is the tone of your shepherd. Even His correction carries rest. Even His silence carries peace. When everything else feels heavy, His words lift. That is why chaos cannot own you. Peace already claimed you. You live in a time where countless voices compete for your belief, advertisements disguised as advice, opinions dressed as truth, fear packaged as logic. Yet, even through all that noise, your spirit stays awake. You feel the difference, like standing between two winds, one cold with confusion, one warm with clarity. The latter always feels like home. When your surroundings tremble, remember how he speaks through the breath of morning light, through a phrase that surfaces mid-thought, through scripture that suddenly glows when you read it. He doesn't need thunder to prove his authority, just a whisper that rearranges your direction. Every chosen one must learn the discipline of quiet, not silence from emptiness, but silence filled with expectancy. It's the kind of quiet that turns rooms holy. The world may call it doing nothing, but heaven calls it positioning to hear. Each time you stop scrolling, look up, and breathe, you make space for him. Every deep inhale becomes a small act of worship. That is how discernment grows moment by moment, breath by breath. The more you listen, the clearer he becomes. Sometimes, hearing him means losing things that once defined you. You may outgrow voices you loved, opinions you valued, paths you once trusted. Don't mourn that. When you tune to heaven's frequency, some sounds naturally fade. It's not rejection, it's refinement. God's voice never leads you into chaos. He calls you out of it. And though his path may seem narrow, it always expands your heart. You begin to see that his commands are not limitations, they're coordinates guiding you to peace. Now, chosen one, imagine this moment as a sacred garden. Every word you've heard so far has been a seed. The decision to nurture it or let it fade lies in your hands. You can water it by staying connected, by opening your heart again tomorrow, by returning to the place where your spirit feels alive. You don't need to force anything. Just keep your heart open. Let the message settle like gentle rain. When you feel moved, reach out. Share what touched you, or quietly carry it into your next conversation. Those small acts become living echoes of this word. They spread light without announcement, like fireflies in the night. The whisper that steadied you will now flow through you. Each breath you take carries traces of heaven's rhythm. Let your life itself become the gentle sound of faith, an unspoken testimony that peace can exist even when the world shakes. Others will find rest beneath the calm you carry. You were never meant to echo the world's chaos. You were designed to echo the divine. Every word of kindness, every act of grace, every quiet moment of obedience becomes a note in heaven's song. You don't have to shout truth, you simply have to live it. Chosen one, when you move forward from this moment, do so with open hands. Release control and receive direction. Trust that every step, guided by his whisper, leads to something eternal. You are not wandering, you are being orchestrated. Let the voice that found you lead you home. Think of it this way: when a flame burns inside you, it naturally gives warmth to others. When your heart finds light here, gently let it glow. Press the symbol of a heart if the words touched you. Release the spark to another soul by sharing. And if you wish to walk this path again, plant your root here by subscribing. Not demand, just invitation. You have heard the calm amid chaos. Now become that calm. Let the whisper guide you forward. Chosen one. The voice of God carries a signature that no counterfeit can imitate. It is not always loud, but it is always distinct. You may not hear it with your physical ears, yet your spirit knows the moment it arrives. It feels like warmth entering a cold room, like light softly filling a darkened space. That is the fingerprint of the divine, the peace that follows his voice. There have been moments when you doubted it. You wondered, what if I'm just imagining this? But then, right after that thought, came a deep stillness, the kind that quiets every argument. That stillness, that's him. His presence leaves residue. It lingers after the words are gone. His peace is proof that he has spoken. He doesn't speak to confuse you. He speaks to confirm you, to remind you that you are seen, guided, and loved. The voice of God will never humiliate you or feed your fear. It convicts, yes, but it does not condemn. It corrects with compassion and commands with calm. When you sense that tone, you can trust its origin. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 29, verse 4. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is majestic. Powerful, yet gentle. Majestic, yet personal. The same voice that commands galaxies also whispers comfort to you in your room. That is the paradox of divine communication. It is infinite and intimate at once. God's voice carries several signatures. It leaves peace, not panic. It draws you toward light, not away from it. It challenges you to grow, but never to despair. It asks for surrender, not shame. Every time you hear a message that leaves you feeling smaller, colder, or fearful, pause. That is not the Father's tone. His words don't shrink you, they reveal you. They don't wound, they awaken. You may notice that sometimes his voice comes disguised as memory, an old verse that resurfaces, a moment of kindness that replays, a phrase that won't leave your mind. Other times it's wrapped in creation itself, the wind brushing your cheek, the rhythm of rain on the window, the hush before dawn. Heaven often speaks through beauty, because beauty is the language of the one who made it, chosen one. It's time to trust the signature. You don't have to question it every time. You are no longer in training, you are stepping into mastery. God doesn't want you to live doubting whether you've heard him. He wants you to walk confidently, carrying his frequency wherever you go. Sometimes that means obeying even when logic disagrees. When he says, wait, you stand still, though the world moves on. When he says, go, you move, even if no one claps. His signature always carries authority, and the moment you follow it, the atmosphere around you aligns, doors open, peace settles, and grace multiplies. The more you follow, the clearer it becomes. You stop needing constant confirmation because obedience itself becomes confirmation. Every act of surrender fine-tunes your hearing. Every small yes sharpens your discernment until his whispers feel louder than your doubts. Chosen one. That's how heaven trains warriors, not through volume, but through sensitivity. You're not waiting for a shout from the clouds, you're learning to recognize a whisper through wind. You don't need to see lightning when your spirit already feels the spark. And now, as you read this, you can sense that same spark again. Can't you? That warmth in your chest. That quiet awareness, it's his voice affirming, you still know me, so don't rush. Sit with that peace a little longer. Let it fill every part of you that fear once occupied. Let it remind you that hearing him is not a gift to the few, It is the inheritance of the chosen. When you type your number below, do it as a prophetic act of recognition, a symbol that your spiritual hearing is active again, that you are one who recognizes the divine tone and follows without hesitation. Comment 888, I follow the voice. The number 888 is not random. It carries a heavenly code symbolizing new beginnings, resurrection, and divine renewal. When you write it, you're declaring that your old season of confusion is over. You're stepping into new clarity, new discernment, and new obedience. Heaven sees that number as agreement, your yes written in light. Every time you declare 888, you align yourself with the rhythm of eternity, the endless cycle of death to self and rebirth in spirit. It means I choose to hear again. It means I trust His voice above all others. And in that moment, heaven whispers back, you are mine, and I am guiding you still. The number 888 echoes like eternity itself, without beginning or end. It speaks of resurrection, the constant renewal of those who listen and obey. When you declare it, you are stepping into an unbroken circle of divine guidance and unending spiritual awakening. Each curve of 888 mirrors your journey fall. Rise. Repeat grace meeting you every time. It reminds heaven and earth that you live by revelation, not reaction. It marks you as one who walks by the voice, forever tuned to the rhythm of new beginnings. Chosen one, you've been hearing Him all along. You may not have realized it, but His voice has been the quiet thread weaving through every chapter of your story. It was never absence, it was subtlety. You thought you were wandering, but you were being guided. Every decision, every delay, every redirection carried His fingerprints. You remember those strange moments when you felt an unexplainable pull to go left instead of right, to wait when everyone said, rush, to speak when you wanted to stay silent. You didn't understand why at the time, but afterward you saw it, the protection, the timing, the perfect orchestration. That was Him. The Holy Spirit doesn't always speak in sentences. Sometimes He speaks in nudges, in atmospheres, in peace that replaces pressure. You have not been alone for a single step. Even in the seasons when prayer felt dry and heaven seemed far, the voice never stopped speaking. It just shifted tone from instruction to observation, from words to presence. Sometimes, silence itself is a language. When heaven is quiet, it's not ignoring you. It's watching you practice what you've already been told. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. Chapter 33, verse 3, Call to me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. You see, He never stopped answering you, just stopped recognizing the form of His replies. God rarely repeats Himself in the same way. He evolves your hearing. When you were new in faith, He spoke loudly, dramatically, to get your attention. But as you matured, His voice softened, expecting you to recognize Him by familiarity, not spectacle. He has whispered to you through people, sometimes strangers, whose words pierced your confusion and lit a path forward. He's spoken through music, through sudden memories, through scripture that seemed to leap off the page at exactly the right moment. Even your dreams have carried fragments of His voice, symbolic and subtle, but unmistakable when your heart is still enough to listen. The reason you're drawn to this message now is because something in you recognizes its origin. Spirit speaks to spirit. What you're feeling as you read isn't emotion, it's remembrance. Your soul remembers the frequency of your Creator. It knows the cadence of truth, the vibration of divine speech. That's why the same words that others skim past hit you differently. Your spirit reacts because it recognizes home. Chosen one. Don't underestimate how long He's been training you to hear Him. Every trial, every heartbreak, every silent season, each one sharpened your discernment. When life felt uncertain, heaven was strengthening your spiritual muscles. You learned to detect peace without proof, to sense direction without details. That is advanced hearing. That is maturity. Look back for a moment. Remember that relationship you almost entered but didn't, that opportunity you thought you missed, that delay that frustrated you. Now you can see the mercy in them. Heaven's no was really protection. What you mistook for loss was actually God redirecting you to greater purpose. You've been walking by voice more than you know. Sometimes His leading didn't feel divine, it looked ordinary, even inconvenient. But that's the secret. Divine guidance often hides inside daily moments. God moves quietly so that faith can grow. He whispers instead of shouting so that intimacy can deepen. He was there when you questioned your worth, softly reminding you, "You're still mine." He was there when you almost gave up, placing unexpected strength in your spirit. He was there in laughter and in loneliness, in both sunlight and storm. The voice that called stars into place has never stopped calling your name. You've been hearing Him since the beginning, every gentle push to forgive, every inner pull to let go, every sudden clarity after confusion. That was not random, that was relational. And now, He's bringing you to awareness. This is the unveiling moment where you finally recognize I've been hearing Him all along. The realization itself is holy. It means your connection was never lost. You're just becoming conscious of it. The enemy wanted you to believe you were disconnected so that you'd stop listening. But the proof that heaven's voice remains is the fact that you're reading these words with tears stirring somewhere deep inside. Your spirit knows its source. Chosen one. Take comfort in this. You have not missed His call. You have answered it. Over and over. Through every yes you whispered. Every prayer you thought went unnoticed. Every act of love you gave when no one thanked you. Those were responses to His voice. From now on, stop asking, "God, why won't you speak to me?" and start asking, "Lord, what are you already saying?" Because the dialogue has never ended, it has only grown deeper. You are tuned again. You are hearing again. You are remembering what your soul has known. Since before birth you were designed for communion, not confusion. The voice that began your story will finish it, guiding you line by line, breath by breath, until destiny meets eternity. Chosen one. There is a moment when hearing turns into hesitation, when you know what God has said. But the weight of obedience feels too heavy to lift. You stand at the edge of revelation and delay the step, convincing yourself you need another sign. But deep inside, you already know. The voice has spoken. Yet your fear asks for repetition. That's the quiet danger of delay. It slowly converts certainty into confusion. Heaven doesn't repeat itself endlessly because faith must eventually answer. Each time you postpone obedience, your sensitivity dulls a little. What once sounded clear begins to blur under the noise of reasoning. You start to analyze what should have been trusted. And in doing so, you move from revelation to hesitation. This is how spiritual delay disguises itself as wisdom. You have felt it before, that tension between knowing and doing. God whispered, "Move." But comfort said, "Wait." He said, "Let go." But emotion said, "Hold on." Those moments weren't just indecision, they were battlegrounds of destiny. The enemy doesn't need to make you rebel outright, he only needs to make you stall. Because delay is still disobedience when the instruction is clear. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy. Chapter 5, verse 33. Walk in obedience to all that the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days in the land that you will possess. That word, walk, matters. It means movement. It implies pace. Heaven's commands are not suggestions, they're coordinates for blessing. When you pause where God said go, you risk missing the moment designed to unlock your next season. The truth is, obedience is rarely convenient. It interrupts schedules, confronts comfort, and stretches logic. But it is also the purest form of worship. To obey is to trust that His vision exceeds yours, that His later often means protection, and His now always means purpose. Think of Jonah running, not because he couldn't hear, but because he didn't want what he heard. Think of Saul offering partial obedience that looked holy but smelled of pride. Their stories remind us delayed obedience is not harmless, it reshapes destinies. Heaven waits for partnership, not perfection. You have your own Jonah moments, the opportunities you've delayed, the forgiveness you've postponed, the dreams you've set aside until later. Yet, even in those moments, mercy has not withdrawn. The same God who called once is still calling. Not in anger, but in invitation. His patience is vast, but it is not endless. There comes a point where continued hesitation becomes rebellion dressed in politeness. Do you remember a time when you felt a clear pull, an idea, a project, a conversation you knew you had to initiate, but something in you resisted? You said, "I'll do it when I'm ready." But readiness never came, and peace slowly faded. That fading was heaven stepping back, not out of punishment, but to remind you that obedience must precede understanding. Chosen one. The weight of obedience will always feel heavier before the first step, but once you move, grace meets you mid-stride. The hardest part is not walking, it's deciding to begin. After that, heaven's wind carries you farther than your feet ever could. God is not trying to control you, He's trying to collaborate with you. His instructions are invitations to miracles. Every act of obedience becomes a seed of future harvest. You may not see the full field now, but each yes plants something eternal. When you delay, mercy waits, but it waits at the last point of obedience. If you want to find God again, go back to the last thing He told you to do. That's where His presence still lingers. You'll discover that what seemed like silence was simply God standing where you left Him, whispering, "I'm still here. Are you ready now?" Don't be afraid to move, even if your hands tremble. Faith does not require perfection, just agreement. Heaven doesn't demand flawless execution, only willing steps. The moment you act, confusion loses its grip. The fog clears. You begin to see how obedience connects the dots that waiting never could. Chosen one. Every delay has a cost. It drains spiritual energy, distorts hearing, and delays blessing. But it's never too late to realign. The key is humility to admit, I heard, but I hesitated. That confession alone reopens heaven's conversation. Right now, mercy is extending another chance. The same voice that instructed you once is whispering again, not louder, but closer. You are one breath away from restoration. The doorway of obedience still stands open, and grace still calls your name. Step forward, not to earn approval, but to reclaim connection. You'll find that once you obey, the peace returns, the clarity sharpens, and the silence breaks, because God always speaks again on the other side of surrender. You are not too late. Heaven has not moved on. You are exactly where grace can still reach you. Take that first step now without fear, without reasoning, just faith. Chosen one, even when your hesitation has echoed through heaven, mercy still speaks your name. You may think you've gone too far or waited too long, but the truth is, God's compassion never expires. It waits. It calls. It pulls you home with the gentlest insistence. You are not forgotten, you are being reawakened. The voice of mercy is unlike any other. It doesn't scold, it restores. It doesn't dwell on your delay. It simply says, come back. You have wandered. Yes, but not beyond reach. God's patience stretches further than your rebellion, and His love runs deeper than your guilt. The fact that you feel conviction proves your connection is still alive. Conviction is not condemnation, it is mercy's heartbeat. When your spirit aches over disobedience, don't drown in shame. That ache is the sound of heaven calling you home. Shame says, you failed. Mercy says, you're still mine. The difference between the two is hope. Mercy always leaves the door open. As the Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 5, verse 17, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation, the old has gone, the new has come. Mercy is the language of new beginnings. It does not erase your past, it redeems it. Every regret becomes a lesson. Every failure becomes fertilizer for growth. The very areas where you fell are now places where grace intends to plant fruit. God's mercy doesn't meet you where you should be, it meets you where you are. It bends low enough to lift you and strong enough to carry you. Even when you've tuned out His whispers, mercy hums in the background, waiting for your soul to turn its head and listen again. Chosen one, you haven't outsinned His compassion, you've only outrun your peace. The moment you stop running, the voice of mercy meets you mid-step, wrapping you in understanding and reminding you, this isn't the end, this is the return. It doesn't matter how long you've been silent. Heaven has not forgotten the sound of your yes. The same God who called you at the beginning still calls you now, not with disappointment, but with delight that you are still reachable. When mercy speaks, it restores time. What you thought was wasted becomes woven into redemption's plan. The years you lost to fear or distraction are not gone. They're simply being recalibrated for greater purpose. God's restoration is not replacement, it's multiplication. You may feel unworthy to come back, but mercy specializes in rebuilding what shame demolished. Remember Peter, he denied Christ 3 times. Yet mercy met him on the same shore where his calling began. It wasn't coincidence, it was divine choreography. The same grace that called him, then called him again. The same grace is calling you. Mercy is not passive, it's pursuit. It chases the runaway. It knocks on the heart's door. It whispers when you try to forget, no matter how far you drift. The shepherd leaves the 99 for the one. And today, you are the one he's after, chosen one. Stop fighting mercy's reach. Let it find you. The voice of God isn't waiting to punish, it's waiting to restore. He doesn't want your perfection, he wants your surrender. The moment you whisper yes, heaven shouts, welcome home. So right now, wherever you are, let the walls fall. Let the guilt go. Let the love rush in. You are not disqualified. You are redeemed. Mercy's voice is proof that heaven still believes in you. Type these words not as ritual, but as realization, because the moment you do, it becomes prophetic agreement between you and heaven. Comment, I return. And as you do, picture what that means, mercy rushing to meet you halfway. Arms wide, light spilling through every locked corner of your heart. You are not just coming back to God, you are coming back to yourself. The version he always saw. The one crowned with grace before you ever fell. When you write, I return, you're not admitting defeat, you're declaring alignment. Those two words carry the weight of restoration. They tell heaven, I choose presence over distance, purpose over pride. It's your spirit's way of stepping back into rhythm with the divine voice that never stopped calling. I return is more than a phrase, it's a bridge. Every time you say it, grace crosses that bridge to meet you. You are not starting from the beginning, you are continuing from where mercy paused your journey. The same God who marked your first yes is now writing your comeback with compassion. Each syllable becomes a key unlocking peace again. When you type, I return, you open the door of your soul and let light flood the dark rooms of regret. You're telling heaven, I no longer hide from the voice, I follow it. That simple confession restores clarity faster than 1,000 apologies. Say it slowly. Let your spirit feel the echo. I return. The moment those words leave your lips, the past loses its hold. Heaven hears, angels record, and mercy smiles because the chosen one has remembered the way home. Chosen one, when you finally begin to walk by the inner voice, life starts to unfold in divine rhythm. The noise that once confused you no longer has power. You begin to sense the pulse of heaven beneath every step. A soft beat guiding you where logic never could. This is what it means to live led by the Spirit, to move when heaven moves, and to stand still when God whispers. Wait. At first, it feels fragile, like learning to walk on invisible paths. You test every step, wondering if you'll fall. But the more you trust, the stronger the ground feels beneath you. Because this path isn't built from certainty, it's built from obedience. Every time you follow that inner prompting, heaven lays another stone before your feet. Walking by the Spirit doesn't mean chaos disappears. It means you stop being ruled by it. The storm can rage, but peace becomes your compass. You don't need the full map anymore. The next instruction is enough. And that's the beauty of spiritual living. It keeps you close to the voice. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 25. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. That phrase, keep in step, is holy choreography. You are not marching alone, you are dancing with divinity. God leads, and you follow not as a servant under command, but as a child walking hand in hand with the Father. Every step you take becomes a conversation, every pause, a prayer, every moment of silence, a breath shared between heaven and earth. You begin to notice the difference between movement and momentum. The world moves quickly, chasing noise, but heaven moves deliberately, cultivating meaning. Sometimes the Spirit will ask you to stop mid-sentence, to turn right instead of left, to call someone you haven't spoken to in years. When you obey, you realize those small directions carry eternal weight. Living by the inner voice isn't about being mystical, it's about being available. It's saying, I trust you more than I trust my own logic. And in that surrender, something shifts. Your day becomes worship. Your choices become prophecy. Your life becomes a message heaven is writing for others to read. But walking this way isn't only about what you receive, it's about what you reflect. The more you listen, the more peace flows from you into every space you enter. Without trying, you become light. Without speaking, you become reminder. Your presence itself testifies that God still guides his people. And here's the quiet secret. Chosen one, others will start to notice. They won't know why. But something about you will make them feel steady. They'll feel seen, heard, safe, because you've become a carrier of his tone. You've walked with him so long that his rhythm pulses through your life. This is the invitation of the Spirit to be so aligned with heaven that your ordinary becomes supernatural. To wake up each morning with a whisper in your heart and go to bed knowing you walked in step with eternity. When you reach this place, sharing it no longer feels like duty, it feels like overflow. You begin to realize that testimonies are not told, they spill. Peace soaks through everything you touch. And naturally, others reach for it. They ask, how do you live with such calm? And your answer isn't a sermon, it's a smile, a look, a quiet story of how you followed a whisper that never failed you. So, if these words have become mirrors of your own journey, let them ripple outward. Let your gratitude become a gentle signal. Press the heart if something here felt alive. Let your joy move like wind through shared spaces. And if this path feels like home, quietly plant your roots here by subscribing. It isn't command, it's communion. Every gesture, every silent yes, is another step in this divine dance. You are not just consuming a message, you are becoming one. Each like is a candle relit. Each share a window opened. Each subscription a soul saying, I choose to walk in the same light. So keep moving, not because you must, but because you want to. Keep listening, not out of fear, but out of love. For the voice that leads you will never misguide you, and the peace that follows you will never end. Walk, chosen one. Keep in step with the Spirit, and let the rhythm of heaven carry you into your next divine moment. When you move in harmony with heaven, every moment glows with quiet purpose. Even ordinary days begin to hum with divine rhythm. The voice does not rush you, it flows through you. You are learning the dance of surrender, the holy art of trusting unseen hands to lead. And in that dance, joy returns, fear fades. Each step becomes prayer. Each breath becomes worship. You realize walking with God isn't about arrival, it's about intimacy. The journey itself becomes sacred, and every heartbeat whispers the same promise. Keep walking. I am still here. Chosen one. Every trial you've endured has not been punishment, it has been training. The ear of the Spirit does not grow sharper in comfort, but in the friction of challenge. You were never being destroyed. You were being disciplined into discernment. Every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer, every silent night, they have all been classrooms where heaven taught you how to listen deeper. You see, anyone can hear when the world is quiet, but only the trained can hear in chaos. You've been learning to recognize the voice of God, not through ease, but through endurance. Pain was your teacher, pressure your instructor, and persistence your final exam. You might have thought heaven was silent, but in truth, God was fine-tuning your hearing through fire. There were nights when you felt abandoned, yet even then, your spirit picked up faint signals. Every tear that fell was not wasted, it washed your spiritual ear clean. Every disappointment stripped away illusions so that truth could echo clearly again. This is divine training, the refining of your hearing, so that nothing false can deceive you anymore. The ancient words recorded in the book of Job, chapter 23, verse 10, declare, "But he knows the way that I take when he has tested me. I will come forth as gold." That is the story of your soul. God did not allow the test to break you, but to burn away the noise. Like gold, purified by heat, you emerged shining not because you escaped the fire, but because you learned to recognize his voice within it. You've been in seasons when everything familiar was stripped away, people left, plans failed, dreams crumbled, yet somehow you still knew when to keep going. Something invisible sustained you. That something was someone. The whisper that said, "Get up again." That was training. Heaven was teaching you to trust inner guidance when outer evidence disappeared. Chosen one. Discernment is not learned in prosperity. It's forged in pain. When the crowd grows quiet and no affirmation comes, that's when your spirit begins to attune. The silence was never absence, it was focus. Heaven was adjusting the volume so that you could finally hear frequency, not just sound. You've learned to hear in new ways. The Spirit speaks to you through atmospheres now, through changes in peace, through sensations that can't be explained. You walk into a room and feel something shift. You meet someone, and your spirit immediately discerns light or shadow. That's the fruit of training. You no longer need constant explanation, you simply know. Every heartbreak expanded your hearing. Every disappointment taught you to lean harder on God's tone, not people's applause. You've learned to tell the difference between what sounds good and what carries divine weight. You've learned to stop chasing confirmation from the crowd and start seeking communion with the Creator. Sometimes training looks like being misunderstood. The ones around you don't always see the growth happening in silence. They think you're retreating, but you're actually refining. The solitude that once scared you has become your sanctuary. You used to fill silence with words, now you fill it with worship. That's the sign of maturity, the ability to sit still and still hear clearly. Your spiritual ear is becoming precise. You can detect when peace leaves a situation, when motives are hidden behind smiles, when a decision doesn't align with God's breath. This is heaven's gift to the faithful to hear what cannot be said aloud. And though this training has hurt, you wouldn't trade it now, because what you've gained is priceless clarity. The ability to know his tone among thousands, to recognize truth not by sound, but by spirit. That sensitivity is sacred. Guard it. The trials have tuned you for assignment. The fire made you fluent in heaven's language. You are now among those who can discern the subtle difference between divine delay and demonic distraction. You've learned that not every open door is opportunity, and not every storm is punishment. Sometimes it's positioning. Chosen one. Remember this always: pain that does not destroy you refines you. You are not broken. You are seasoned. You've become a vessel that vibrates with heaven's resonance. What once hurt you now helps you hear. So lift your head and thank God for every difficult lesson, for it was in the silence you found His sound. In the loss you found His love, and in the fire you found His frequency. You are no longer simply a listener, you are a discerner. Your training is complete. And now heaven can trust you with greater revelation. Because you don't just hear words anymore, you recognize the voice. Every test you survived has carved spiritual precision into your soul. What once sounded like noise now separates into clear tones of truth. Heaven can now whisper, and you'll hear every word without confusion. Because your spirit has been trained by fire. Rejoice. Chosen one. The silence that once terrified you has become your sanctuary. You no longer panic when heaven pauses, you listen. Every delay, every trial, every tear has turned your ear into a divine instrument of discernment and peace. Chosen one. There comes a moment when heaven reveals the code behind obedience, a rhythm, a number, a divine signature hidden within your journey. It's more than mathematics, it's meaning. You begin to notice repetition, patterns that seem to whisper, this is not coincidence, this is confirmation. You start seeing numbers, hearing phrases, sensing alignment that no logic can explain. That's not superstition, that's synchronization. Heaven speaks through patterns because creation itself was formed by divine sequence. The Spirit moves in cycles. What God begins, He completes. And when you walk in step with that rhythm, everything begins to harmonize. Doors open effortlessly. Timing feels perfect. Peace follows each step. That's not luck, it's spiritual alignment. You are walking in heaven's pattern, as was spoken in the sacred texts of old. In the book of Revelation, chapter 21, verse 6, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. Those words aren't just a title, they are a revelation of rhythm. God exists in completion. Nothing He starts remains unfinished. The same eternal cycle that governs galaxies governs your growth. When He began speaking to your spirit, He also determined how it would end in victory, not confusion. This is where obedience meets manifestation. The number of divine completion is 777, the code of fullness, of perfect alignment between heaven, spirit, and earth. When you walk in that pattern, you become the echo of His will. Your decisions align with divine timing. Your words carry heavenly authority, and your peace multiplies without effort. Chosen one. You've spent seasons walking in fragments, half-truths, half faith, half surrender. But this season calls for wholeness. God is not asking for a piece of your heart. He is calling for all of it. 770. 7 is not just a symbol. It is an invitation to complete obedience. It represents the moment when heaven's rhythm fully syncs with yours. Every delay you've endured, every unanswered question, every detour, it all leads here. God wasn't punishing you. He was aligning you. You were learning to trust His sequence, even when you didn't understand the order. Because divine timing always arrives disguised as waiting. When heaven says now, it's not responding to your calendar, it's responding to your readiness. The moment your heart aligns, doors open. The moment you surrender fully, promises unfold. That's why this number 777 is prophetic. It marks the intersection of divine perfection and your obedience. Chosen one, when you type that number, you are declaring, I am in sync with heaven. You are speaking agreement into atmosphere, saying, every incomplete part of me is coming into order. You're not manipulating miracles, you're mirroring them. Heaven doesn't need your striving, it needs your alignment. Look back on your life for a moment. Can you see the pattern now, the times you thought you were delayed, yet later realized you were protected, the opportunities that slipped away only for better ones to arrive? That's divine sequence. The same God who orchestrated stars has been orchestrating your steps. You're not just walking through random events, you're moving through divine mathematics. Every moment has purpose. Every encounter carries meaning. Even your waiting seasons were equations of grace. This number, 777, is heaven's reminder that your story is not in fragments anymore. It's whole. What was broken is being made perfect. What was delayed is being delivered. What was hidden is being revealed. When you see that number, let it awaken your faith again. Let it remind you that nothing in your life has been wasted. The pattern has always been pointing here to completion, to peace, to fulfillment. Now, take this as your declaration. Let heaven hear your agreement, not through noise, but through number. When you write this, you are not typing digits, you are releasing alignment. Comment 777, I am in divine rhythm. This isn't ritual, it's revelation. As your fingers move, you're tracing the pattern of completion itself. You're telling heaven, I am ready to live whole, to walk complete, to finish what you started in me. And heaven, hearing that sound, will respond with one whisper, it is done. When you type 777, you are not pressing numbers, you are pressing truth. Each 7 represents a layer of divine order, body, soul, and spirit moving as one. It's your way of saying, every part of me now agrees with heaven's rhythm. The number 777 carries the sound of completion. It is the echo of God's finished work. The same pattern written into creation itself. When you declare it, you are reminding the unseen world that chaos no longer commands you. Your steps are synchronized with peace. Your days unfold with purpose. Every digit of 777 is a drumbeat of destiny. The first 7 marks your healing. The second, your alignment. The third, your fulfillment. Together, they form a seal, a covenant that says, I will not live half awake anymore. When you release it, heaven records it. You are no longer chasing promises, you are walking inside them. Chosen one. There will come a time when the voice that once spoke clearly seems to fade into silence. It is not punishment, it is promotion. Heaven sometimes withdraws sound to strengthen sight. The teacher does not speak during the test, not because he's absent, but because he's watching how deeply you trust what he already said. The silence of God is one of the most misunderstood seasons in a believer's life. It feels like distance, but it is actually depth. When the voice goes quiet, God is not hiding, He is deepening your roots. He is teaching you to lean on what you've learned, to live by faith instead of feeling. You've been there before, haven't you? Those days when prayer felt like speaking into a void, when scripture seemed dry, when peace felt far away. You searched for signs, waited for goosebumps, begged for answers, and still nothing. Yet, somehow, even in the emptiness, your heart refused to quit. That quiet persistence was not weakness, it was worship. As was written in the book of Psalms, chapter 46, verse 10, "Be still, and know that I am God." That command is not a suggestion, it is a secret. Be still. Stop striving to hear. Stop forcing confirmation. Stillness is not inactivity, it is inner awareness. In stillness, you begin to realize that silence is not the absence of God's voice, it is the echo of His trust in you. When God grows silent, He is giving you room to act on what He's already spoken. He's teaching you that His words were never meant to be stored, they were meant to be lived. You can't stay at the place of revelation forever. Eventually, you must walk it out. Silence pushes you into maturity. Think of the seasons when you couldn't hear Him but still obeyed. You prayed. Even when you felt nothing, you forgave. Even when you didn't feel peace, you kept walking. Even when the path was dim. That is the highest form of hearing obedience without evidence. In those quiet moments, heaven takes note. Chosen one. The silence of God is not rejection, it's recognition. It's how heaven says, "You've grown." When a parent stops holding the child's hand, it isn't neglect, it's confidence. God's quietness means He trusts you with independence guided by His Spirit. But silence also serves another purpose. It reveals other voices. When the divine voice softens, the counterfeit ones get louder, hoping to fill the void. In that tension, you learn to distinguish truth from imitation. You discover that not every loud voice carries light, and not every quiet one carries absence. The silence teaches you to detect authenticity without constant reassurance. Sometimes, God's quiet is strategy. The enemy listens for your directions. But when heaven goes silent, the enemy loses the trail. The pause is protection. The hiddenness is holy. God covers you in stillness to shield you from sabotage. And within that stillness, miracles still happen. The air feels ordinary, but grace works in secret. Seeds sprout underground, unseen by impatient eyes. So it is with divine silence, it conceals growth until the appointed time of revelation. When you can't hear Him, remember what He's already said. Go back to the last whisper, the last instruction, the last peace you felt. His word doesn't expire. What He spoke in one season still carries power in the next. This silence is shaping you into someone steady, someone who doesn't panic when heaven pauses. You're learning to anchor faith in memory, not emotion. You're learning to trust that the voice who once thundered will speak again when the timing is perfect. Even the prophets experienced it. Elijah sat in the cave and heard only wind, fire, and earthquake before the whisper returned. Jesus Himself experienced divine quiet in Gethsemane. Yet, even in silence, heaven was working redemption. So it is with you, chosen one. Your quiet season is sacred. It's where revelation settles into reality. Don't despise it, embrace it. The absence you feel is not proof of distance, it's evidence of depth. One day soon, the silence will break again. The same voice that once guided you through storms will speak once more, but this time, you'll hear differently. You'll hear with maturity, with peace, with unshakable knowing. Until then, stay still, breathe deeply, trust the quiet. For even in the silence, the sound of his faithfulness fills the air. In the quiet, your spirit learns endurance. The stillness teaches you that faith is not noise, it is knowing. Heaven's silence becomes a symphony to those who have learned to listen with the heart instead of the ear. This is sacred maturity. Every pause from God carries hidden preparation. You are not being ignored, you are being equipped. The silence is sharpening your sight, softening your soul, and strengthening your trust. What you call waiting, heaven calls weaving destiny together. When his voice returns, it won't be to repeat, it will be to reveal. You'll realize the silence was never empty. It was full of formation. And when he speaks again, you will recognize every note as proof that he never left. Chosen one, once you learn to discern the silence, you begin to recognize that the battlefield is never just external, it's internal. The war is not waged in the skies above you, but in the sound waves within you. Every day, voices compete for dominion over your peace. Some whisper doubt, others shout distraction, and amid it all, the quiet voice of truth waits for your attention. The greatest battles are not fought with weapons but with words. The enemy knows that if he can invade your inner dialogue, he can distort your discernment. He doesn't need to stop your prayers, he only needs to corrupt your hearing. If he can fill your spirit with confusion, he can silence your obedience. That is why your mind has felt so loud lately. It's a battleground of sound. You've noticed it, haven't you? The sudden rush of negative thoughts that appear out of nowhere. The heaviness that arrives right after peace. The internal arguments that leave you exhausted though nothing external has changed. Those are not coincidences, they are coordinated assaults. The enemy attacks through suggestion because he cannot create, he can only distort. But you have been given authority to silence the noise. You carry the weapon of truth, the sword of the Spirit, sharper than deception and stronger than despair. Your hearing has been trained for war. You can sense when lies dress themselves as logic and when peace stands disguised as hesitation. Heaven has equipped you not just to survive the battlefield, but to command it. The voice of God thundered in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." Notice the phrase, every tongue. The verse doesn't only speak of physical opposition, but of verbal warfare voices. Words, accusations. The enemy's favorite weapon has always been language. He twisted it in Eden. He distorted it in the wilderness. And he tries to manipulate it in your mind. But you, chosen one, have the power to condemn those tongues, not through anger, but through authority. When the voices of fear rise, you answer with faith. When doubt whispers, you reply with destiny. When condemnation shouts, you speak grace. You do not argue with darkness, you outshine it. Every thought that contradicts God's word must bow to the truth you now carry. This battlefield is sacred because it reveals mastery. You are learning not to react to every noise. Silence is now your strategy. When you refuse to argue with lies, You rob them of oxygen. The enemy feeds on attention. But when you stay anchored in peace, his chaos starves. You are not weak because you feel warfare. You are strong because you recognize it. Discernment itself is evidence of growth. The fact that you can sense the difference between divine conviction and demonic accusation means you've matured. You no longer confuse correction with condemnation or resistance with rejection. You know the texture of truth. And though the fight can feel relentless, remember, heaven never leaves you weaponless. You have peace as armor, prayer as strategy, and praise as artillery. When you worship, the noise loses power. When you speak truth aloud, darkness recoils. Every declaration of faith is a strike in the unseen realm. Chosen one. The voices of the battlefield are meant to test your allegiance. Will you follow fear or follow faith? The side you listen to becomes the side you strengthen. That's why heaven keeps teaching you to guard your gates, to choose carefully what enters your mind, what fills your ears, and what lingers in your heart. Be mindful of the conversations you entertain, the music you absorb, the narratives you repeat. Every sound either anchors or agitates your soul. Spiritual warfare begins with selection, the conscious decision to tune your inner frequency to the voice of truth. And when the noise grows unbearable, remember this: you are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. The battle was settled long before you stepped onto the field. Your role is not to conquer, but to enforce what heaven already declared. You are not pleading for peace, you are proclaiming it. In this war of voices, silence becomes your sword and discernment your shield. The moment you stop letting fear narrate your story, heaven reclaims the microphone. God speaks in authority, but he also speaks through rest. Sometimes winning looks like stillness. Chosen one. Lift your chin. You were not chosen because you are unscarred. You were chosen because you can still hear in the noise. You are the soldier who fights with song, the warrior who wins through worship. When the battlefield rages and the noise of doubt swells again, return to the whisper. It is always there beneath the storm, beyond the chaos. Unwavering, the same voice that called you in peace now sustains you in war. And though the clash may continue, the outcome is certain. Light wins, peace reigns, and truth remains undefeated. The voices of fear will fade, but the voice of God will echo forever in the chambers of your heart. Chosen one, you belong to a generation that walks by the voice, not by sight. You feel it deep within. The world is spinning faster. The noise is growing louder. And yet, your soul craves the still rhythm of heaven. You were born for this moment, not to blend in, but to be a signal, a living frequency that cuts through confusion with calm authority. This is the generation that will not move unless heaven moves. The ones who have stopped chasing applause and started chasing alignment. The ones who can sense when the wind of the Spirit shifts direction and follow it without needing to understand. You, chosen one, are part of that remnant. God is raising a people who no longer need lightning to believe they follow the whisper. The world will call you strange, but heaven calls you necessary. Because when darkness thickens, it's the ones who follow the voice who become torches for the lost. Your sensitivity is not weakness, it's strategy. As written in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 13, but when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all the truth. He will not speak on his own, he will speak only what he hears. And he will tell you what is yet to come. That verse is your map. The Spirit of Truth doesn't just comfort you, he commissions you. You are being positioned to lead others who have forgotten how to listen. There's a quiet revolution, rising voices tuned to heaven, walking in compassion and clarity. You are among them. You are not here by accident. When you follow the voice, your life itself becomes an act of prophecy. Every step you take declares, I trust what I cannot see. And through that trust, others are awakened. Your obedience becomes their invitation. People will watch your peace and feel something sacred stir inside them. They won't know it yet. But what they're feeling is the same call you answered. You see, chosen one, faith is contagious when lived authentically. You don't need to preach loudly, you just need to live clearly. The world doesn't need more noise, it needs more living proof. When you embody what you believe, your life becomes a sermon without words. Imagine your light as a ripple moving through still water. Each choice to follow the voice sends waves into hearts you'll never meet. That is how the kingdom expands, not by force, but by flow. The Spirit multiplies through willing vessels, through small acts of obedience that echo in eternity. If this message has reached you, it's because you are part of that echo. And echoes don't stay confined, they move, they travel, they multiply. What you carry inside you isn't meant to stay silent, it's meant to be shared. Not because you owe it to anyone, but because truth, once awakened, cannot stay still. If these words resonated, let your heart respond in its own language. Let your gratitude ripple outward. Press the symbol of a heart, not as reaction, but as recognition. Let your joy flow through shared light to another soul who might need this reminder. And if this sanctuary of words feels like home, quietly anchor yourself by subscribing. You may also choose to leave a trace of your voice below, a simple comment born from your spirit. It doesn't need to be long. Even a few words of truth can echo. Write what peace feels like to you. That whisper might reach someone who's forgotten hope still speaks. Each act is symbolic, a gentle wave saying, I hear, I receive, I remember. No pressure, no demand, only invitation. The same Spirit that guided these words can carry them further through you. Because somewhere out there, another chosen one is waiting for a sign that God still speaks, waiting for proof that silence is not abandonment, waiting for a message that breathes hope back into weary lungs. You could be that echo. You could be the whisper that reaches them. This is how movements begin, not with thunder, but with hearts that say yes quietly. Your like becomes a candle. Your share becomes a spark. Your presence here becomes a prayer in motion. You are not simply an observer. You are part of what heaven is doing. So stay close, not to the noise, but to the voice that called you here. Walk with this remnant of listeners, those who choose peace over panic, purpose over popularity, and truth over trend. And as you do, remember this: following the voice will never lead you astray. It may take you through valleys and storms, but it will always lead you to still waters. The same hand that guided you here will guide you forward. So keep listening, keep shining, keep walking in step with the whisper. The world may never understand your obedience, but heaven will never forget it. Every quiet act of faith becomes thunder in eternity. Heaven counts what the world overlooks your listening. your stillness, your yes. Keep following the voice. Chosen one, for even the smallest echo of obedience can awaken a generation still learning how to hear. Chosen one, what you do in obedience does not stay contained within your life. The sound of your surrender ripples outward, touching destinies far beyond your sight. You may never see their faces or hear their names, yet heaven records how your yes shifts generations. You have not simply been called for yourself, you have been called for nations. When God speaks to you, it is rarely only about you. Every act of obedience is a seed that grows in the soil of unseen hearts. The decision you make today, the one no one celebrates, the one that costs you comfort, will open doors for someone else tomorrow. That is how heaven works. The divine plan is not a straight line but a network of connection, and your obedience is one of its vital threads. Sometimes you'll wonder why He asks you to do small, hidden things, to pray for a stranger, to forgive someone who never apologized, to let go of something that looked perfect. But the Spirit's commands are never random. You are participating in an invisible architecture of redemption. Each time you obey, you strengthen the framework of grace for others to stand upon. According to what is revealed in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 2, I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. That promise was not just for Abraham, it is for every chosen one who answers the call of obedience. God's blessing upon your life is not meant to stop with you, it's meant to flow through you. You are both vessel and river. What heaven pours in, you pour out. Think of this somewhere right now. A life is being prepared to intersect with yours. You haven't met them yet, but your faith is already building the bridge. Your prayers today become their provision tomorrow. Your surrender creates space for their salvation. That's why obedience matters. It's never isolated. When you move in step with heaven, you become part of a divine chain reaction. One yes spoken in faith can set off a sequence of transformation that reaches thousands. You may never see the full extent of it, but eternity will reveal the harvest. Chosen one, don't underestimate your influence. Heaven doesn't measure it by numbers or applause, but by faithfulness. Sometimes your greatest ministry will be the quiet choices you make when no one is watching, the words you don't speak, the bitterness you refuse, the patience you show in silence. Those unseen acts echo in eternity louder than sermons. There are prayers you've whispered in tears that have already crossed borders and generations. There are battles you've fought privately that ensured victory for people you'll never meet. The world will never give you credit for those sacrifices, but heaven writes them in light. And even when you doubt your impact, remember, obedience always multiplies. Moses obeyed, and a nation was freed. Esther obeyed, and a people was saved. Mary obeyed, and redemption entered the world. Each of them began with a quiet, trembling yes. So did you. You may think you're small, but heaven sees you as strategic. You are placed with precision every location, every delay, every assignment carefully mapped by divine design. Even your struggles have purpose. They make your empathy authentic. You can now comfort others with the same comfort God gave you. That's multiplication. Your obedience unlocks inheritance. The more you follow, the more heaven entrusts to you. This is not about status, it's about stewardship. God gives greater revelation to those who will use it to bless others, not boast. When your heart stays pure, your influence becomes unstoppable. Chosen one. This is the season where obedience becomes overflow. The steps you take in faith will ripple far beyond your lifespan. Your yes will outlive you. Generations not yet born will walk on the roads you're paving now. Every time you forgive, you break generational curses. Every time you speak truth, you plant seeds of freedom. Every time you trust when it hurts, you rewrite history. You are not just living, you are legacy in motion. You are part of a divine relay, and your obedience is the baton. One day, others will pick up where you left off, carrying the same flame forward. That's why your faithfulness matters. It ensures the fire never goes out. So do not grow weary in well-doing, even if you feel unseen. Heaven is watching. Even if you feel small, the kingdom counts you mighty. God is using your steps to rewrite destinies, to align timelines, to birth revival through simple obedience. Chosen one. Your obedience is unlocking nations, not always in geography, but in spirit. Every soul you touch, every prayer you speak, every act of compassion sends light into the dark corners of the world. You are heaven's messenger disguised as ordinary, carrying eternity in your breath. Keep walking by the voice. Keep saying yes. The world may never understand the cost of your obedience, but heaven knows and eternity remembers. Chosen one. The same voice that called you from darkness now prepares to crown you with light. The journey has been long, the silence deep, the testing fierce, but all of it was leading here. Every whisper you obeyed, every tear you offered, every moment you refused to quit has brought you to this divine threshold. The voice that once summoned you in secret now speaks your name in victory. You have walked through valleys where faith was your only lamp, through nights when even prayer felt heavy. Yet still, you kept listening. You trusted when logic mocked you. You stood when others retreated. You believed when everything said stop. Heaven has watched your endurance and found it radiant. You were never abandoned. You were being anointed. The voice that crowns you is not merely giving reward, it's giving recognition. You have proven that obedience is not a performance, it's a covenant. You learned to follow when it cost you comfort. You learned to stay silent when you could have shouted. You learned to bow when pride demanded applause. That humility has drawn heaven's favor around you like armor. As it was written in the second letter of Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8, "Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." This is not the crown of gold, it is the crown of recognition, the seal of completion. It is heaven's way of saying, "You heard me, you followed, and you finished." The same voice that guided you through shadows now announces your arrival into glory. The crown is not placed on your head for perfection, but for perseverance. God never asked you to be flawless, only faithful. Every time you stumbled and stood again, every moment you chose love over bitterness. Every time you forgave when it was easier to fight, you earned another thread in that crown of light. You are the living proof that the voice never fails. Look back for a moment, not with regret, but with reverence. The detours that once felt painful now gleam with purpose. The heartbreaks that once broke you now shine as holy milestones. Each scar glows like a gemstone set into your crown, evidence of battles won through surrender. This is the paradox of the chosen: your wounds become your worth. The voice that called you didn't promise ease, but it did promise presence. And that presence never left you. Even when you couldn't hear him, he was shaping you, whispering beneath the noise, strengthening the foundation of your faith. Chosen one. Now heaven stands still. The sound of your journey fills eternity like a song. Angels lean close, for obedience has its own melody. You are not just crowned with light, you have become light. You carry the radiance of one who has walked with God and survived the refining fire without losing tenderness. Your crown is not a symbol of rank, it is a reflection of intimacy. It means you listened long enough for heaven's voice to become your own. You no longer just hear him, you echo him. Every word you speak now carries traces of eternity. Every step you take releases grace into the atmosphere. There is a quiet glory on those who obey unseen. You wear it now. You don't need to prove your anointing. It's evident in the peace you carry. You don't need to chase recognition. It's written in the way heaven moves when you pray. The crown is invisible to the world but undeniable to the spirit. You have become what you once sought, a living message, a walking miracle. The voice that once called you chosen now calls you crowned. This isn't the end of your journey, it's the beginning of your reign. You are being entrusted with greater authority, not to rule, but to restore. The same hands that lifted you from ashes now place destiny upon your head. The crown is both symbol and assignment. It reminds you that hearing the voice was never just about direction, it was about transformation. You are no longer the one searching for God. You are the one through whom God now speaks. You have become the resonance of his truth, the living embodiment of his whisper. Chosen one. Walk forward with this new weight of glory. It is not heavy, it fits you perfectly. Forged by every season that shaped you. Wear it humbly. Let it remind you that the journey of obedience never ends, it only ascends. You have crossed from hearing into becoming, from following into leading, from chosen into crowned. And as you move forward, remember this unshakable truth. The voice that began your story will echo through eternity, carrying your name like a song of victory that never fades. You are crowned not for what you've done, but for who you've become, the one who listens, follows, and loves without fear. Chosen one. Pause here for a breath, a holy one. Let everything you've just walked through settle deep within you. The journey has not been about words, it has been about awakening. You've traveled from confusion to clarity, from noise to knowing, from being called to being crowned. And now, the same voice that began this story whispers softly again. Carry what you've found into the world. This isn't a farewell, it's ascending. Every insight, every shiver of truth, every spark that stirred your soul, these are seeds meant to be sown. Somewhere, someone waits in the same silence you once endured. You could be their reminder that heaven still speaks, that peace still exists, that light still wins. So, if these words became warmth inside you, let that warmth move. Touch the heart not for attention, but as testimony. Let your light travel further by sharing. Perhaps your small act will reach another wandering soul. And if this space has become sanctuary for you, quietly root yourself here by subscribing, so that the voice can keep finding you. And when you feel led, leave your own echo below a comment born from truth, a sentence that breathes hope, It doesn't need to impress, it just needs to be real. Your words might become the whisper someone else has been waiting for. There is no pressure, only invitation. Because the way the voice spreads is through willing hearts, those who choose to carry it beyond their screens and into their lives. The story doesn't end here. Chosen one. It continues every time you listen. Every time you speak peace into chaos. Every time you let the divine frequency flow through you. The voice still calls. And now, so do you.